Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Nicole Chapman. I'm with the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association. I serve as our Northeast chapter director. I also work with the bed and breakfast around the state in discussing with some of our restaurants some of the ideas and information they were looking for into entering phase one and entering into what will be a new normal for all of us. Some of these ideas of what will takeout and delivery look like as we proceed into the different phases. So we wanted to put some information together, and I will introduce our speaker and panelists in just a moment, but just wanted to remind everyone that this webinar today will be recorded. We will share information and handouts with you afterwards. Some additional information. The information provided here is for educational purposes, and FRLA does not warrant or endorse any particular providers. FRLA is prohibited from providing specific legal, financial, or accounting advice, and the information represented here is not intended as such. FRLA encourages businesses to qualified, competent advisors in these fields and to explore specific solutions. And with that, I will turn it over to our moderator today, Mr. Fred LeFranc. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, we're going to find this to be of interest and value to you. We're going to talk a little bit about Takeout and Delivery 2.0 in the midst of an ever-changing world. We did a webinar a few weeks ago, and the world has definitely evolved since then. And even from our initial conversations about this webinar, some things have already been corrected in the marketplace. We'll get a chance to explore that. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to go ahead and begin our process. And if you want to get a copy of the incomplete guide to receive a copy of Reopening Guide, just text the word report to 55444. We'll be happy to include you in a copy of that. So let me start off with Erle.
Hey, Fred. Thanks for having me today. My name is Erle Dardick, and I have been working for the last few decades in the space of off-premises. I founded a company called the Monkey Group of Companies, which was made up of Monkey Media Software, technology solution for restaurants and food service operators to help them manage their order management for takeout, catering, and delivery, as well as the founder of the Catering Institute and a conference business that was called Off-Premise Insights. And I sold that business last year to EasyCater, and I'm happy to be here today to try and share some insights.
Yeah, we're happy to have Erle because he's got a lot of wealth of knowledge regarding this off-premise space. So thank you for joining us, Erle, from British Columbia, Vancouver in Canada. So thank you so much. Danielle.
Good afternoon, Fred. Danielle Rosse here. I'm in beautiful South Florida and have been in my restaurant here for over 20 years. We're currently closed, waiting for some indication that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And we have pivoted into grocery, which we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about, and just hanging in there.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. Janet?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Janet Ellis with Erwin Insurance. I work in the commercial lines department with Erwin, and I'm going to be sharing some just brief information with you today that I think you'll find very informative.
All right, Janet, I understand this is your first webinar, right?
Bless you, Fred. Yes.
Good, good. Well, welcome on board. You got Erle's the big veteran of these things, so he's going to guide you through this whole thing. So, Bobby?
Hey, thank you so much, Fred. Bobby Koopman with Heartland Payment Systems. I'm here representing the technology end of the conversation we're going to have today. You know, Heartland, we're really focused on connecting the consumer with the merchant, in this case, the customer and the restaurateur, and you know, really reducing or eliminating the friction between the you know, that's inherent in that ordering process. So for the sake of this conversation, you know, robust online ordering platform, ordering from apps, card not present transactions, that sort of thing.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. So let's sort of set the stage a little bit and talk about what I call the restaurant omni-channel. There's a lot of tributaries beneath these, but these are the primary ones. So obviously the biggest one has always been dine-in. That sort of has been the big daddy until recently. Then there's takeout, drive-through if you're a QSR or fast casual, delivery, and then catering. And as we know, what's happened when we shut our dining rooms down, we immediately pivoted to this sort of takeout drive-through model and delivery if it was available to you. And that's what we've been trying to do. And so we're going to sort of explore this a little bit, sort of give you a context of it. So, you know, so where are we right now? Okay, so As we know, as we start reopening our restaurants, our team members are going to look like they're in a hospital operating room with masks and hats and gloves and so forth and so on. And many restaurants pivoted to this delivery, pickup, and grocery model. And I'm going to start off by talking to Danielle about that, because she was one of the early ones who went from no delivery, no takeout. All of a sudden, she's selling, bleach and rubber gloves through her restaurant portal. And I want to talk about that experience, the good, bad, and the ugly. Danielle, if you can share that with us.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. So it was the night before we were closing for good, and we were kind of panicking because we don't traditionally do a whole lot of takeout business. And I was speaking to one of my suppliers, and they said, man, we have all this food that we don't know who to sell to. And I said, man, I just left Publix and I can't buy any food as a consumer. So we kind of pulled our resources together. I stayed up through the night, put our website made it live for a grocery, and immediately were able to provide our customers grocery essentials that they were unable to find in the grocery store. And it was amazing. The first 2 weeks, people were really appreciative. We self-fulfilled from a delivery standpoint, so we were able to create or retain some of our jobs here at the restaurant, and it was a great success. It's slowed down as the stores have started to restock their shelves, so I don't believe it's going to be very sustainable long term for us, but it's been something in the interim that we've managed to work through.
Yeah, and I think Danielle is a good example of someone who's very opportunistic and pivoted to a model that gave her some revenue in the meantime, filled a need in the marketplace. But as the grocery stores have caught up with their own supply chain and things are beginning to shift, now it may be time to do a little bit differently. But I believe that these new sales channels are here to stay. And I'd like Erle to comment on that a little bit, because it's got to become part of your DNA. And he's got a lot of experience helping restaurants from the catering standpoint, but also as an expert, he's seen what's happened over the last few weeks in the industry. So Erle, talk about these sales channels and why it's important to keep them in the back of your mind of something you need to do to change your brand.
Yeah, well, thanks, Fred. So I think, we've been, as an industry, we have been heading here for several decades where, the digital transformation that's taking place across all sectors in retail is really impacted the inside of our restaurants. Now, whether you're a restaurant or whether you have a commissary or a ghost kitchen, whatever your concept is, you have consumers who have more options than ever to be able to shop and order goods and services. And that's happening. We're seeing that across every single industry. So, as it relates to restaurateurs specifically, we have geared and designed our restaurants for what is a dine-in experience. And that has slowly been shifting as the off-premise strategy is not well understood. And what I've learned on the way is that the actual key to the strategy is to really understand the differentiation of channels. And so even if you start looking at takeout as a moniker to capture really what is everything that's consumed off-site, the takeout business itself is broken into several channels. And so the direct-to-consumer channel for takeout, for example, is where your consumers interact directly with your brand and order directly from you. Everyone calls it online ordering, but it's not as simple as that, because essentially the differentiation between channels is the key to success. And so when you start looking at marketplace partners like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, all the plethora of digital, channels that are out there, we're just getting started, Fred. This is the beginning of it. And we are going to see dozens, if not hundreds, of these digital channels that are going to open, because the new fight really out there is the digital real estate. And so, Amazon has come at it a couple of times and failed. They're going to be coming back at it. You're going to see Walmart and those people start getting into this space. And so the key really is to understand the differentiation of these channels and design the inside of your production lines as well as your menus to be able to segment the experience. So for example, if you have a takeout order and you have a customer that wants to order direct, you might offer one experience. If you are publishing menus to a third-party marketplace, my recommendation is you publish something different. And the differentiation can be in terms of packaging, it can be in terms of portion sizes, certainly pricing. Not all channels are created equal, and the cost of manufacturing and distribution is different for each one. So as we go into this conversation, language is important. I think if you separate your off-premise conversation into what is a takeout business and what is a catering business. Those are the two real buckets. And then under each of those, you have sub-channels that you need to start thinking about. We can, talk more about it, but we can go on a webinar all day just on that. But, that's kind of where I think things are headed.
All right, so, I think Erle made a good statement, and for some people it may be hard to capture everything because he's got a different point of view. But Danielle, we're getting ready to reopen up restaurants. You may or may not be in that group in the early stages. I know you're in a different county in Broward, so it may take a little bit longer. And I just hung up with a restaurant too in New York City that said, well, they're going to let them open up at 25% of capacity. And he said, it's not worth it. I'm not even going to open. I'm going to wait till at least 50% is available, if not more, because the economics don't work out. On top of that, we're talking about reduced menus, changing your product mix, and Erle sort of alluded to that, to the various channels. What are you planning to do in terms of this reopening?
Right. So it's interesting that 25% I say is really a curse, not a gift, because as we all know, restaurants take so much just to open up, and our margins are small as it is. So I'm fortunate in the sense that I have a tremendous, almost 80% of my restaurant is outside, because I am on the beach and I have 200 seats outside. So we can, open up and maintain social distancing and have a significant amount of tables outside, but most restaurants do not have that. However, I have heard some of the cities in our area have started to explore expanding their streets, maybe closing down certain streets, in a main thoroughway on the weekends, so that restaurants can kind of have alfresco dining outside. So, people are getting creative and finding ways that they can kind of expand outside of their four walls in order to maintain social distancing. So I think we'll see some of those, expanded around the area. And I'm sure if you're in a shopping center, working with your landlord to be able to expand onto different parts of, patios, there will be options for people to explore. But 25% interior space is just, like I said, it's a curse, not a gift to be able to open like that.
Yeah, and this is a great example of this uncertainty that's still in the air. So when I've talked to groups before, I always tell them events like 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, stuff like that, the Great Recession, those are seismic events. The ground shifts, buildings collapse, there's rubble, there's damage, there's concern, but it stops. And then you're able to sort of pick your way through the rubble. What's happening here is this whitewater world of ever churning waters that we just don't know what's going to happen. And a restaurateur today has to be more than ever alert and aware of the day-by-day, moment-by-moment changes to be able to pivot whatever you're going to do. So if you went to a takeout delivery restaurant model and now the restaurant goes down, you got to change that, that's fine. But these are the things that we're talking about. So let's get more into the sort of the delivery 2.0. So at the very beginning, I presented omnichannel. And omnichannel is a term that came out of retail. Back in the late 90s, when the web started coming about and stores started offering goods through services through the web, they had a separate warehouse for things that you ordered online from their stores. Omnichannel basically said it was now all interconnected, and you were able to offer things on the web that were in your stores, take things from the store, send it back on the web, vice versa, back and forth all over the place. In fact, if you go to a Nordstrom's when they reopen, you'll notice they've taken floor space for pickups only. You can order online and go pick it up in your stores. And restaurants have to think about it the same way. If your business model today and tomorrow is the same that it was 6 weeks ago, the odds of you staying in business successfully are low. It's just the reality of it. With one big exception, if you have a drive-through, that gives you a big advantage over many other people, because a drive-through still allows you to have social distance, a unique menu offering, people can feel safe, and then get out of the house and go do that. But if you're any kind of sit-down restaurant or focused on delivery and such and takeout, you have to be thinking about your business model a different way. And these various channels are ways you're going to be able to get more business. You got to think about your business, not just from the brand standpoint, as Danielle shifted, all of a sudden she's selling bleach, to I need revenue. And how can I do that? And Danielle, you're also making food for the school district, aren't you?
That's correct. I was able to have a contract with our school district, and we're doing distribution at 3 locations right now. And that has just been such a blessing to have. And we were able to employ an additional 10 employees last week and this week in order to fulfill that. So that's been a great opportunity.
Yeah, so that's part of how you have to be thinking. You got to be really opportunistic. So Bobby, you're one of the companies that's offering some free connectivity for restaurants to get online and to offer their current menu or revised menu, meal kits, groceries. Talk a little bit about what you're offering some of the FRLA members, please.
For sure. And I think before you hit the nail on the head with this idea of omnichannel products, omnichannel ordering, obviously we think about it as omnichannel for payments as well. So, the restaurants are in a space where you're trying to find a lot of these different third-party companies to fulfill a specific need, a Grubhub, a Bite Squad, et cetera. And they do one thing, and then you have to form a relationship with another company that does one specific thing. And so, one of the challenges for certainly the restaurant owner in this conversation is to find those technology partners, find those companies that can really handle all the different aspects of what this new online ordering world looks like. Getting a platform, for instance, when you manipulate your menu inside the store, it automatically broadcasts online. Items are taken out of inventory when ordered online and ordered at the store level with a phone order or carryout order. And those are really the types of conversations, the types of technologies that certainly we're able to provide, and we are providing at now at zero cost to restaurant owners for the next 3 months.
That's great. That's good. So this is agnostic to the POS system to be able to use your platform to get online. And I know many people are still on the fence about whether they should get online or not. But the reason to keep on saying these channels are here to stay is that if we go through a second round of this pandemic in the fall, when there's still no vaccine, we're going to be right back here again. So it's an opportunity for you to begin to take some time to develop that channel instead of in a mad rush, as many people had to do, a little bit more thoughtful, look at package, you look at what your menu offerings are, and it's okay to have different prices through different sales channels, as people talked about. Also, people are beginning to look at it and say, I got to decide, am I going to do self-delivery or am I going to do third-party delivery? And there's a lot of pros and cons to that. We know that third-party delivery has taken historically 25 to 30% commission on sales. Many cities are now capping that, like New York going to do a 10% cap on that, which is good news for the restaurant, probably bad news for Seamless.com or Grubhub, who owns them. So it's not a win-win situation here. For years, private equity has subsidized delivery to consumers because consumers aren't really paying the full boat of it. Restaurants have, and it has not been a profitable venture. But as you look forward to reopening, reducing the menu to the items that sell, looking at increasing productivity so you can do more food with less people. And for a while, we're just going to have less is more mentality. It's going to make it more profitable for you. The guests will still get a chance to experience your brand, but not in the same way. But let's look at some of the resources that are also available to you besides what Bobby mentioned that Heartland's offering. So one of them is Hertz. Hertz is allowing you now to lease vehicles with or without drivers. And I'm going to have Erle comment on this in a second. But so if you haven't quite decided how to handle this, but you want to test it out, you can start by using Hertz with some of their drivers or just the vehicles themselves and using your employees as drivers. So Erle, what are the pros and cons of self-delivery in this marketplace?
Yeah, okay. So I think as operators look at their delivery strategy, delivery is core to success in the off-premise space. Again, look at your channel management. So, for example, when you look at catering, when it will come back, this is my third experience where catering has vanished after some major crisis. It will come back, and so when it does, I think some of the decisions you have to make is, which orders do you take on your own and which ones don't you? And I think the jury is not out yet on the economics of delivery when it comes to takeout. Average order sizes, we know that online ordering, for example, with a takeout transaction, the average order size is larger than in-store. We know that for certain. We also know that catering is averaging, $300 on an order. So what I'm seeing out there is operators who have a hybrid solution, Fred. They're doing some of the deliveries on their own. They've actually gone out and leased vehicles. Those vehicles are branded. They are mitigating risk on large value orders and handling them themselves. And then for smaller orders, they are using partners. Now, as you look at your partnerships, it's really, really important to differentiate between marketplaces and logistics partners. And there's been a lot of confusion around that. I still see a lot of confusion. So for example, when you look at a marketplace like DoorDash, they also do logistics. Those are two very different businesses. They're divisional. DoorDash will actually do your deliveries for you for your direct consumer business. And there are some great solutions out there for integrating into what they call DoorDash Drive. There's a company called Deliver That out there who's doing straight up catering deliveries. They don't have marketplaces. It's purely transaction based. It's a fixed cost, and you can build that into passing those costs on to your consumers. And so it's very, very important to really understand the differences between marketplaces and logistics companies. And I find it fascinating now that Hertz is stepping up here. I imagine all the rental car companies will, where they are now offering delivery fleets to handle the execution of your deliveries. It's a fascinating dynamic. And it makes total sense because they've got idle fleets. They've been hit with travel bans and all this stuff, and their cars are sitting there and they've got to do something. And so they are pivoting into logistics, which is a fascinating dynamic. So, yeah. So the message I would leave operators with is just, there's a hybrid model that you need to research and understand well.
So the other thing that is happening is if you're going to start doing delivery by yourself, you got to consider the implications in terms of insurance. So we have an insurance expert on the webinar today. So if you can comment on this, please, in terms of how people might look at this situation with insuring themselves so that they don't get into any trouble.
Absolutely, Fred. Delivery risk management strategy lines up with your brand strategy. So is it a pattern of hiring bad drivers, an effective brand strategy? Probably not. You need to hire good drivers, and the same is for the risk management. It all goes hand in hand. What steps can you take to hire good drivers? Well, you need to check their motor vehicle reports. You need to check their backgrounds, and you might want to give a check to the vehicles they're going to be using as well. Do a little walk around, make sure that they're taken care of. Does the vehicle have dents? It's all about the image out there, going out into the public. Some of this can be tedious for a business owner to have to do, but it is necessary. But remember, your insurance agent can help you do some of this stuff, like when it comes to running the MVRs, or they may even have a way of inspecting the vehicles. So use those resources to protect your branding. Do good brands have written, thoughtful safety policies in place that they talk about with their employees and their drivers? Generally, yes, because anybody that's out there, and if anything happens, if a claim happens, you'd be surprised how many times people forget what was included in their coverage. So you want to drill these safety policies into the driver's head, and you want to make it a part of your vocabulary. Just constantly repeating the brand that you're trying to protect. And do good brands invest in technologies? You bet they do. In the insurance world, telematics is not necessarily new, but it's growing in popularity and accessibility. Insurers can provide this, or you can create your own program, and you get a cell phone notification when the driver is acting recklessly, and it happens in real time, and then you can address it with them. Let them know that speedy to customer is a good thing, but speed to tragedy is to be avoided. That's something you don't want. So avoiding loss is priority. Ensuring coverage in place. You can't avoid loss. It's if you can't avoid loss, then at least make sure that you have the coverage.
Yeah, so Anna was kind enough to share with us some potential pricing here that I have up on the screen, and she's available to you through the FRLA website to answer more specific information. She's an absolute expert in this stuff, and just to cover your bases and dot your I's and cross your T's so you don't get into any trouble. So I want to make sure as we get ready to do some Q&A here, we talk about sort of what's next. So the big thing is to really monitor your reopenings for revenue. That's where your guide's got to be. What can you do to maximize revenue through the various channels we talked about? Consider also focusing on your strongest meal parts. You don't have to open up for lunch and dinner right away. You can start with dinner only. And we know that the biggest demands on the weekends for casual dining, where for a more limited service restaurant, it might be during the week. A lot of restaurants have been impacted if you're near business centers because no one's going to offices anymore. So we don't know the implication of that. So you can't make a broad stroke comment about how to reopen without you looking at your individual marketplace to understand what the dynamics are there. But definitely put yourself in a position of strength. And whatever it costs you to open up your restaurant, it can't cost you that to reopen it. Especially if you can keep your existing staff, it'll make it easier for you. Someone made a comment that 10 companies will help you with your outside areas with temporary covers. That's a great point to enlarge your outside areas. We talked about when Danielle was commenting on having an outside area for people to seat and have social distance. Consider making delivery and pickup part of your DNA as you go forward. Don't hesitate to take advantage of it now, just in case this pandemic comes back around. And of course, the most important message is to remain optimistic, because that's really what it takes to really move this forward. So I'd like to see if our panelists are available to answer any questions, and also, depending on the questions we get, give them an opportunity to give some closing statements and comments to the people that are listening to this webinar. So let's see if we have any Q&A going on here. So while we're waiting for that to come in, Danielle, let me ask you this. What guide are you going to use in terms of your success as you begin to reopen going forward that you can share with the people here? What's your consideration? Because you're a business owner, you're feeling the pain of it. What would you say it would be?
You know, Fred, it's fairly overwhelming day to day. And so after the first 2 weeks, which I really felt the weight on my shoulders, I really had to step back and just take one day at a time. You cannot make decisions past today right now because there's so much unknown. And that has been really, really helpful, is just focusing on today. And you know what? No, we're not open. No, we don't know when we can pay our bills again. But to me, while we're closed, this is a pause button. And what's helped me is just recognizing that I'm hitting pause. It doesn't mean it's over. And as soon as we're open, and you know, we're gonna hit unpause and be able to start to make some real decisions. But don't panic right now when there's just you can't make decisions with so much unknown.
Right.
You just have to focus on today.
Bobby, is it too late to get online?
Not at all. Not even close. You know, the trend is it's certainly moving that direction, and you know, our job, obviously, we exist in a very crowded marketplace. You know, obviously, there's more third-party delivery sites popping up, as Erle mentioned, than you can really count. So it's just a matter of trying to maintain our flexibility, trying to maintain our availability, and really working with these merchants to provide that platform. They can easily get online, easily start filling that channel of their omni-channel plan. So to answer your question, no, we are setting them up left and right.
But I also want to clarify something on the Hertz model. If you rent a car through Hertz with a driver, they will insist they use their insurance because they own the vehicle, just to keep that separate from what Jana was talking about for you using employees' cars and whatever the case may be. Erle, what closing comments do you have to share with people in terms of their thoughts as we move forward in this new world?
Yeah, well, here I would encourage everybody, be patient with yourself at this time. This is a very difficult time, but stay true to your strategy. And I think our industry, Fred, has learned a lot of lessons in this process. I mean, there's just been so much learning. But if I'm a restaurateur today, I am doubling down on off premises. I am absolutely doubling down. I'm going to figure out who my partnerships are. To Bobby's point, I would get my tech stack absolutely in order. It is paramount, absolutely paramount. And I would double down on my takeout. I would double down on catering, and just really try to really understand the strategy and the segmentation of these markets. And then I would design my products and services around those markets to drive more revenue. This is all about getting your customers to come back and spend more money with you. That's what it's about. So in order to do that, we have to design for it.
Okay, good. That's great. Well, we have not had any of the questions come in, so I want to thank the panelists today for joining us. Thank you for being so generous with your time and information. And for those of you who are listening to this, God bless you. I hope things go well. We'll keep you posted on the updates, and the FRLA will continue to support your membership. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Fred.